All Mixed Up takes you on a journey through family, culture, race and identity. Journalist Jason Om has bared all to share with readers his most confronting experiences and greatest discoveries. It begins with a 12-year-old boy trying to save his mum when he finds her in bed not breathing. And when he can't save her, he thinks he's hopeless and useless. Utterly heartbreaking. We discover early on that Jason was destined to tell stories and be a journalist. His dad was a part-time broadcaster and newsreader. It's a memoir of a clash of cultures, Cambodian, Malaysian, Australian, all playing out in the suburbs of Melbourne. A story of sexuality and coming out. All Mixed Up is Jason Om's story. And Jason Om joins me now on Weekend Breakfast. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for being here.
Tell me, how does it feel to have written your story, shared it with everyone?
I think it's really, I'm just so proud of bringing this book baby into the world, because it's been, 6 years of writing, and lots of people will know my story about my dad's struggle with my sexuality over a 16-year period. But this is actually going back, way back. It goes from my 1980s childhood to my 1990s teenhood, and the struggle that Dad and I had after Mum died. And so I'm just so proud and happy that it's finally out. It's just a combination of a lot of hard work.
A big part of our job as journalists is that we're the ones facilitating the telling of the story. We don't often share our own. What prompted you to step into that spotlight?
Well, I think that, after Mum died when I was 12, I called the ambulance. And, after that event, I put up this wall, emotional wall, to block out the trauma, but also to just get on with life. And so it wasn't until my 30s that I had to confront the past. In 2013, it was the 20th anniversary of Mum's death. And in that same year, my grandmother was gravely ill. And so all of the feelings that I had suppressed and held back behind the wall came crashing through. And that was the catalyst for me to go on this journey, to look back at my past and interrogate my past, and to work out what was going on with Mum. Because I had a very complex relationship with my mother. She could be kind and generous and cuddly and, touchy-feely, but she could also be cruel and bizarre. And I always knew her as a woman full of sorrow. And that's the way I looked at her. But through this book, I've been able to redefine my memories of her and kind of rediscover my love for my mother.
And you did that by exploring her background, finding out some home truths about your half-sister in Malaysia. Give us a sense of what that was like and that journey in itself. Yeah,
well, what I do is that, I turn my investigative skills on my family.
Uh-oh.
In a kind and gentle way. I use those skills to really interrogate the assumptions of the past, because that's what we do as journos. We need to question things. And so it was really going on this journey, fossicking through the past to find out what happened to her. Because Mum always used to say to me, "Oh, I had a nervous breakdown." But what does that actually mean? It's a euphemism. And as you will find out, there was an event that affected her before she came to Australia that then made sense to me. That made all of her sorrow make sense,
As I was reading it, it felt like the context, it was like the setting, the scene of what would then happen and become your mum.
Yeah, because the key to all of this, her sorrow, is actually my half-sister. And my half-sister lives in Malaysia. We didn't grow up together. As a kid, I always thought, why is Mum so concerned about this girl in Malaysia? But Mum left her behind in Malaysia, and there's a story behind that, because as a kid, I never knew the backstory to that. My family's not one that talks. It's they're very private family, and both my dad and my mum had these private traumas that they never talked about. And, you know, I'm a kid. You know, your parents don't burden you with what they went through their lives. So, you know, this is about rediscovering that and understanding, you know, bringing clarity to a very confusing childhood.
And then if you look on the other side, the relationship with your dad that you describe in your book, that he thought that you were too Aussie, that you weren't fitting what he expected of you. Then layer on top of that your sexuality, which the whole nation shared with you, that journey in 2016-17 during the marriage equality vote. You got a call, 15, 16 years after you came out to him. What happened?
Yeah, well, look, I came out to a friend when I was 18, and then I came out to Dad when I was 20. So he knew about this. You know, I was upfront about that. But clearly clearly he was still struggling with that. You know, on the surface, our relationship was ticking along, but actually the truth was that he didn't deal with it. And then in 2016, I got a call from him out of the blue, and I was in this building, in fact, at work, and he's ringing me up and saying, "Would you take a wife?" And that completely blindsided me because I'd been striding through life confident in my sexuality. You know, my friends knew, my work colleagues knew, you know, the public knew on Twitter. So I was comfortable with that, but he obviously wasn't. And he had a particular view about, you know, he wanted me to have children and he wants me to get married, and he comes from, you know, that's part of his culture. So I was breaking all the rules. You know, I'm not being the obedient Asian son if I'm not getting married and having children. So, you know, but it's been a complete 360-degree turnaround for him. You know, it's been a metamorphosis because he's come from 15, 16 years of denial to this complete acceptance, where he's watching me march in the Mardi Gras and complain that, you know, they're not showing enough of me in the Mardi Gras. You know, that's a 360
That's a
degree.
massive
It's a
transition.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you know, this is a world that he's unfamiliar with. So, you know, and even in that, back in 2017, I think for him it was, he didn't realise like how much acceptance there was of me, and so for him he was in this kind of this world where he thought it was this really dark secret, but actually it wasn't.